Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of the podcast, because we don't know what it is exactly anymore.
Are we still calling it MoCast?
I think it's still MoCast, but listen, we're gonna switch things a little bit and get more, I would say, in-depth, more really grimy with the World of Warcraft classes and specs, because I think it's needed. And it only made sense to get in here the boys from the Acuris Discord and talk a little bit about what's on the thumbnail.
Well, today, unless you've read the title, but do people still read titles?
Click with their eyes closed on videos?
I don't know, but clearly today we're going to be talking Frost Decay. This today is going to be like one hot hour about Frost Decay.
Hot Frost.
I'm a natural.
Very smart man, very smart. Well, let's just fuck up. Let's see, who do we have today in the podcast to talk about Frost?
Well, basically, if you haven't checked any of our guides for Unholy and Frost for the past, 1 year, 2 years?
No, 2 years almost.
2 years almost. You might not know these boys unless you've also been the Acuris. We have Banter, one of the top admins, if not the top admin in the Acuris. We have him walk over there. What's up, man? And Biceps, you might have seen him before on YouTube. He does YouTube things for Unholy and Frost. And one of the biggest brains I have had the pleasure to talk to is Taze, right down below.
Hello, boys. How you doing?
Hello.
Howdy.
Let's give the people a quick bio for everybody, starting with, I guess, Banter and going around.
Hi, I'm Banter. I have been a mod / admin of Acuris since it was back in IRC, back in the old days, before Discord. And I'm currently teaching game design, and I'm currently tanking, actually, in-game.
Tell me you're tanking with Blood Decay.
With Blood Decay, yeah. With Blood Decay.
No warrior, no vengeance.
Nah, pretty much. I do have warrior ult though. And I'm more big into how Frost is doing in the PvP, especially. I'm more so big into PvP. Oh yeah,
to some PvP a little bit too. All right, next up on the list is Mr. Biceps. I think it's okay. Yeah. He had it under control.
Yeah, we were worried, but he knew what was up.
All right. Biceps, can you let the people know a little bit about yourself?
Hey guys, Bicepspump here. I am a useful minion in the Acuris Discord, but possibly more importantly, I write the Wellhead, Frost, and Unholy guides, and I do both Twitch and YouTube content. I played DK since Miss Pandaria, and from my point of view, there's simply no other class in the game. Everything else is just, either computer controlled or something which isn't an option. It's all DK for me.
Well, there you have it, man.
Well, unless you play Classic and there's no DK. I've seen you play Hunter, man.
It's all good.
Yeah, I know that is a bit of a conundrum. I have to kind of pretend.
We're going to have all the links for the boys in the description, so definitely, check Biceps out, on stream. I think we did a couple of streams with him as well, like on his stream, right?
Yeah, and then he came on ours as well.
Yep. All right, and last but not least, the big brain. You mentioned some big brains here.
So if I'm not mistaken, please correct me on this one. I think Taze does most of the theory crafting for DK right now.
I do a significant portion of the stuff that a lot of people don't see. Bicep and Chew help out a ton too, but yeah, a lot of what I'm doing is just stuff that nobody's ever going to notice.
Well, let the people know, man. Let the people know.
Yeah. Mostly I write the APL, the action priority list for Simulation Craft, and help maintain the module there. So anytime you're on a sim, you're using stuff that I've written. So that's that. I'm also studying psychology right now, student. So that's something that's going for me.
Hello.
It's a nice something we can get.
It's pretty much some interesting backgrounds for all the folks we got here today on the show. And we're playing a DK. DK is not the most brain dead spec, I would say.
It's gonna have it.
What? Ooh. BM? What? Okay, well, not trashing anybody because we're gonna have all the specs eventually. Gonna get some bad terms.
Didn't think about that.
All right. So we got everybody's background. Okay, so now let's just jump straight into things and talk about Frost DKs. You played a lot of Frost DK, and I do want to mention that the boys that we have here on today, they helped out pretty much almost all the time with our DK guides, regardless if it's Frost, Unholy,
one
Blood.
that was without them. I think it was the one.
Maybe the first
8.1.5
Probably the first.
Yeah, that was the original one. That's actually how because that's when I don't know if that's when Unholy started to pop up or that's when I was actually aware of it. But I was looking, it's like I couldn't understand the AoE rotation. I found Biceps guide on Wowhead, and then I was looking on YouTube. It's like, okay, Biceps, is this guy one of those beefy guys, those Bajira, those GGs? And like, I was looking on YouTube, was like, he doesn't look like he pumps his biceps. Just mess around. But no, Biceps actually did explain it really well. And after I figured, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, but we're not here to talk about Unholy necessarily, because he did mention he also writes Frost and all of that. But as I said, let's just jump into like the Frost DK. We're gonna touch on a little bit of everything from it. And as a Frost Death Knight noob, because I haven't touched my Frost DK since like Warlords of Draenor, which I think I saw some of them actually say that. I think it was the Grain on the stream chat that said that what was like the best iteration for Frost. Can we start off with that? What was the best version of Frost DK in what expansion? And then we can evolve from there. Anybody can jump in, by the way.
free for all.
Frost and Wad? What? I don't know about that. Frost and Wad was bad. We stopped playing it after the first tier. We had like the good old whack-a-mole playstyle where you were waiting on Killing Machine procs in like the first tier. And then after that, everyone just went on Holy and played Breath of Sindragosa as Unholy, which was actually really fun at the time.
Don't forget about Necrotic Plague, man.
And Necrotic Plague, yeah, that was the thing too. Oh man. I remember when like Skullfly was first like pioneered running Breath for like Unholy. It was one of the burstiest things we've ever seen. And then on top of that, because Blood also had access to Breath of Sindragosa, that was the best tanking of all time, in my opinion. Well, that's for a different story. That's a different day. I see a lot of people saying Nighthawk Frost is the best iteration. Now, what do you think, Biceps? I know you're very fond of this, I think.
I surely it was fun. I didn't personally play Nighthawk Frost. I've been a bit of a Unholy fan for a long time in my history. But I would say my favorite iteration was when I started off in Mr. Pandaria, running 200 Frost. That was good fun. The Might No Speedy nostalgia. I sometimes think back and ask myself, was I a total pleb back then? I don't know. I thought it was fun though, but not a very well-informed opinion, I must say. When it comes to Nighthawk, I feel like it's a bad idea to have too long breath windows, even though it might be fun. You kind of end up a situation where you are forced to stay in a boss for a long time to get good damage, right? So we were a bit worried coming to Shadowlands that, Frost would go back to these 1 minute plus breath windows, which is really worrying. Even though it might be fun, it's not a good situation to be in progression, because if you get any sort of mechanic, you can't play around it. It's not like you can choose your window to be like, okay, I'm going to breath in here to avoid getting mechanics. Your breath is so long, you can't avoid it. And then you end up in a situation where it's just RNG and you have to run until you lose it.
Yeah, that's a major concern if they ever introduce two legendaries this expansion. Frost breath windows are going to start becoming insane. Rage of the Frozen Champion and Colterias together is a dangerous combination to play with. That is for sure.
Yeah, it's I'm actually I tested with all of them, and it seems like like Bicep said, there's something fun about the two-hander, but I think breath is just silly. And I was thinking about trying to put it back to back with Unholy, and especially put it into perspective with a lot of other specs. It feels like if you're playing breath, outside of breath, there's really nothing else going on. I mean, you're just consuming Killing Machine. If that's your thing, then fine. But because breath can probably be extended for such a long time, that's probably why maybe it's not doing as much damage in a shorter duration, and probably that's why it's never gonna do a lot of damage in a short duration. So that kind of contradicts the type of encounters that they're doing. It's how I feel.
All right.
Yeah, definitely agree with you there.
It's like, but if I want to circle back, so can you all of you agree that the best iteration of Frost Death Knight was in Mob? Did I understand that correctly?
I didn't play Frost and Mob, so I can't confirm.
Yeah.
I'm partial to Cataclysm Frost because that's when I picked up DK. I really liked playing Frost in Firelands, and that was when I really fell in love with DK as a spec. So it's got a bit of a nostalgic hit for me, so I might be a little bit biased there.
Right.
So we have 3 different expansions. That's good.
Didn't the Grain said that he felt like Warlords Frost was like the best?
I don't know. There was a lot of talk about Frost on stream. I played Frost for the first time in Legion also, so I couldn't really say about what I only played Blood, if I recall.
All right. Enough with the memory. Let's take it back to like that, like the present. Let's touch a little bit on the current talents for Frost. Where do you guys think things can improve? Where do we have like dead talents? Something can be like changed. Where do you sit on like the whole spectrum of the talents so far?
Yeah.
Maybe I can start off. I have quite a lot of opinions here.
Go for it.
I must say I'm quite happy that we now have Obliteration being a competitive talent to Breath and Ghost and for a single target. It's very healthy, and it's quite nice for lots of people because there is a very distinct divide in the Frost population where you have a set of people that are completely fine with Breath of Sinagosa and they kind of like it, and then you have a set of people who just completely hate it. So it's always nice that there's some kind of alternatives. You don't end up with a population that really hates the playstyle and then they have nothing alternative. Sure, Breath is better than AoE and all that kind of thing, but for single target, they're really quite close. If I were to highlight something, I think it's the row with Gathering Storm. Currently, Gathering Storm is just so much better than all the options. And it kind of creates a scenario where you never pick anything else. And that's always a bit boring, right? Other than that, I feel like most of the stuff are like well balanced. There's like 2 options in every row that you can pick up, and that's quite nice. And you choose different options depending on build and those kind of things. Obviously, there are always the talents, icy talents. Even though it increases your killing machine proc rate, it's simply not good enough to be picked. Even though it would have been a nice talent, kind of play around, it's just very hectic and you feel stressed about it all the time. And then the gain is not enough to even warrant it, right? Even if you play perfectly, it's not better than just picking inexorable assault.
Right, good.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd probably bring up is Frost Scythe, because right now it's in a sorry state. Obliteration, just with the legendaries, the soulbinds, and the conduits that we have this expansion, nothing at all plays in the Frost Scythe, sorry. And it's creating this kind of vacuum where Obliteration and AoE is just the same thing as single target, and it really doesn't feel as fluid as it could if you were to integrate another ability like Glacial Advance or Frost Scythe.
Yeah. Frost Scythe, on paper, it is like fine. I've recommended it for quite a long time because it is actually better in AoE. It doesn't feel like it's better, but the fact that you spread Razor Eyes with it just makes it better. You could tap through and apply Razor Eyes on all targets manually, but Frost Scythe doing it automatically to 5 target instantly is pretty good. It's just fallen out of fashion. Yeah. People are running Avalanche instead. It brings more single target. It's kind of the same on AoE, right? So yeah, it's a bit sad.
I was just gonna say, what do you guys think about Horn of Winter?
Oh my god, I haven't pressed that button in years.
Horn of Winter.
I remember back in the old.
Yeah,
I remember back in the old day it was the buff, and now it's just on-demand resources every 45. Yeah.
Not good enough to be under DC.
Yeah.
It's actually better than a lot of people think it is. If you actually look at simulations and look how it pans out, it's actually like if you look at the top 3 talent combinations, it's in that top 3, right behind Root of Continuation for Breath, for example. Just because the way the spec is designed now, that on-demand resource generation is actually pretty good because you're kind of flooded on resources during the beginning of Breath, but being able to say press that when you need those resources can extend your breath out longer, which is actually fairly valuable right now because we're doing a lot of damage with breath, but the duration is kind of where it's stuck right now.
Not even that. I think a lot of the encounters, so like Sludge is a pretty good example. I think a lot of the encounters are definitely built around heavy burst windows and trying to like hit specific DPS checks or DPS raid DPS requirements in those windows. And like for that specific circumstance, Honor Winter could be viable if just to get the amount of resources in that time window to like make that killing machine proc or something like that.
I feel like if it goes off the GCD, everything will be fine, and people can pick it up without having this annoying button that just kind of clunks up your rotation.
Oh, is it still on the GCD?
Yeah,
it should be on the GCD, I think.
However, if they did put it off, that would just be mean against Unholy, right? Because then Frost gets everything off the GCD and Unholy stuck with everything on it.
That's actually what I was thinking about now. And since we're talking about this, I mean, let's address the elephant in the room: hypothermic presence. What's up? What's up?
Why did they put that in? I don't know. It's supposed to be played with breath, but it's not good enough.
I mean, they just never made a random talent, didn't they? They fill a slot. It was like, we'll just put something in here. Okay, here you go.
Yeah. But it's not that they didn't put Shield Streak there for PvE. That would have been fun.
Oh, that would have been so much fun. I think that's just one of those talents that are just waiting to get redesigned next expansion or next tier.
Honestly.
Sorry, go on, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, honestly, the way it was initially intended to work before they changed Pillar Frost's cooldown would have been pretty all right, because it would have aligned with every Pillar of Frost. You would have had plenty of resources to work in there. Wouldn't be as good as Gathering Storm, not even close, but it would at least have this niche scenario where you could have an abundance of resources in Pillar if you needed it. Now, not so much the case. It doesn't sync up with anything.
Here's a random thought, because I remember we were talking about breath, and I remembered HFC. Not a HFC, the tier before that. What was the Foundry one again? I can't remember.
Blackrock Foundry?
Blackrock, yeah. What if, instead of hypothermic presence, you had a talent there that increased the amount of runic power you get from Chains of Ice by 10? Yeah. So...
Oh, we're gonna get back.
You have the option. So you have an option to pair it with Sindragosa. So it's like a pairing talent, and then it's an option if you're very low on resources if you want to extend breath further, but at the sacrifice of losing Gathering Storm. I think that could be interesting.
I think it would have to be very powerful to actually replace Gathering Storm, because Gathering Storm is so awesome.
Maybe.
Yeah, it would have to be insanely strong, especially when you're considering Cold Heart. You'd be sacrificing damage in Cold Heart to pop it at opportune moments during breath. There's just it's a lot of trade-offs that would come with that. It would need to generate like 50 runic power to be worth it.
What about Icy Talons? What if that did like mastery? Some sort of like master interaction as well? Maybe like with the Razor Eyes?
I mean, Chains of Ice already does if you take Cold Heart.
Oh, no, I see Talons, the 15 ability.
Oh, sorry.
What do you think if it turned your, melee attacks into like mastery damage or something like that as well? Something crazy.
I think there's a lot of things to do with it.
Yeah.
Are we talking about replacing hypothermic here?
I moved on to Icy Talons, sorry.
Isn't melee damage?
I was looking at Icy Talons, yeah.
Isn't melee damage a pretty big part of Frost Decay right now? And if you make it Frost damage, wouldn't that be a little bit strong?
Could be fun.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I just feel like they need to buff it slightly. Give you 2 more second duration, just a little more haste, and then you're good to go. Right? It's too stressful, and you don't get enough haste at the moment. So if they just buff it slightly, I think it would be a fun talent.
Yeah, for sure. It does conflict a little bit with both of the major talents at the moment, though, because if you're playing Obliteration, you're probably not going to be pressing Frost Strike a lot during Pillar windows, because you're going to be constantly proccing that rhyme. So there's a good chance of it dropping, and it just doesn't synergize well enough. So the extra duration, as Bicep would say, probably be worth it just by itself.
I actually had a question. I mean, I think I might have asked you guys this before, but this is maybe my biggest question mark with Frost Decay, and what the reasoning is. Maybe you guys can have a deeper understanding about this. But why doesn't Frost Decay have a baseline AoE runic power consumption? It's a resource that you generate, but in AoE, if you want to spend it, you have to get Glacial Advance, which, I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, when I talked with you guys back in beta, Glacial Advance was good at one point, or was that an AoE? I can't remember for the life of me. But it feels so awkward to press Frost Strike in AoE. It's like there's like 10 targets around me. It's like, oh, I want to hit them with my AoE abilities. Wait, I need to consume my runic power. So it kind of feels like the resource generation in terms of mindset is kind of different. You would have maybe, let's say, play Frost Scythe, which is a generator, and then use the consumer to hit single target. So it kind of feels like they flipped a little bit around, which in hindsight, if they wanted to turn Obliteration into like this super hard hitting single target playstyles, like, okay, if you play Obliteration, you don't have any AoE damage, but you're just gonna melt targets one by one. Okay, that's an interesting take on a DPS that not a lot of DPSers have, or any, I think, because everybody has, oh, this is my single target button, this is my AoE button. But it's still like when you build resource, you kind of feel like, okay, now I'm consuming, and now something has to happen. And Frost Strike doesn't feel that way, at least in AoE.
Yeah, that's very true. Like Frost DK does have a resource problem in AoE. Like you cap runic power because, you know, why would you spend it? It doesn't provide much AoE damage, right? I feel like, you know, Unholy, they got Epidemic baseline. That was awesome. That was great. It would have been nice if Frost got Gathering Glacial Drons baseline as well. I think it would be nice because currently, if you want to pick Glacial Advance, you have to unpick Gathering Storm, and you simply don't make that pick, right? You lose too much single target. You can gain AoE, like Glacial Advance can pump in AoE, but you lose like loads of single target. It's not worth it.
Yeah, the only reason I can think of why they wouldn't baseline Glacial Advance would probably be because Breath exists. If you're playing Breath, having an AoE RP spender that does a lot of damage just doesn't work well with Breath as a talent, and that's the only real conflicting essence of that.
Would that make sense if they had the Glacial Advance maybe stronger and on the same row as AoE, maybe replacing Ice Cap? But then again, there's the problem of Obliteration, because if you want to give, I feel, if they would want to give Frost Decay somehow an AoE identity by spending runic power, it would kind of have to be either be on a single roll, all of them on the same roll or baseline.
Go ahead, Banta.
I think the only way to actually do this, and this is a bit wild, is swap Frost Scythe with Glacial Advance and make Frost Scythe cost 20 or 30 RP. Yeah. I think
that's a good idea.
Solution. Yeah.
Frost Scythe costing runic power would be nice.
Yeah. And maybe Glacial Advance will cost a rune in opposition. So Frost Scythe will compete with Gathering Storm and Hypothermic Presence. Obviously, when you're using Breath, you're not going to be pressing Frost Scythe, and instead, your Killing Machine proc will just go to Obliterate, which is fine. I mean, and you still have the bonus of a Killing Machine that can be spent with Runic Power. So you would actually need to have like some.
Yeah. That's actually quite fun. Yeah. That comes back to like Frost Roots back in Mr. Pandaria, where you had to be reactive.
Yeah.
Because you could spend a Killing Machine on both Frost Strike and Obliterate. So you had to see it coming and then, react and pick the right consumer. I think there was a lot of feedback being given Shadowlands with like, come on, make a cup for Runic Power. That would be lovely. It would be interesting. But yeah, maybe it was too big of an overhaul.
Yeah. Looking at the talent row now, I'm just like thinking, this just needs like a couple, like 2 weeks in the oven, maybe 3 weeks when the next expansion comes out. Just to have a look at a couple like tricky talents, and then maybe it could just be really strong, or like have a lot of more versatility at least. Not the stat, but versatility, the talent of.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tez?
Yeah, that would be a pretty fine idea, but then you still kind of run into the same situation we have now if you swap the runic power, rune cost, the Frost Strike, and Frost Scythe and Glacial Advance, because they essentially just serve the same exact role at that point. They're just, cost a different resource.
Yeah.
I think one possible solution, like current solution, would be to make Glacial Advance hit harder on your primary target. Because currently, what's making people not pick it is because you don't use it in single target, so essentially a pure loss in single target. So if they make it deal extra damage to your primary target, something like that, that could help it out and kind of make it fight against Gathering Storm on a more even footing.
Yeah, they could even go the breath route and do square root scaling to where it's really big damage, but once you get into AoE, that square root scaling kicks in and it kind of peters off.
And think about what Banter said as well, and the state of 9.1 PTR being up in 2 weeks now. What are the chances, because this is what I always hope for, but what are the chances that the PTR is just going to last a longer time, because that's kind of what we're all thinking.
I'm pretty sure it's going to last a long time.
What are the chances that they're actually going to address classes at least in a more minor way, because I'm actually hoping that classes like Frost Decay and other specs that I've kind of gone under the radar when it comes to talent changes might be addressed, because honestly Hypothermic Presence doesn't really feel like they've addressed Frost. They just added that there. It feels like it's supposed to work with Breath, but it kind of feels like it's counterproductive to Breath. But nothing else. It's been the same for what, 3 years?
I don't think they heavily addressed Frost Decay for a long time. Like minor changes here and there, but I'm a bit skeptic that they will address like Frost Decay majorly in 9.1. Because they don't really do that, except like we had the launch of Shadowlands. Okay, we had like the Shadow Priest rework and all of that, but like in between patches, I don't think so. Maybe, I don't know, probably the boys won't agree, but in terms of like 9.1, maybe they could address something through the, I don't know, conduits or legendaries. Because this is like how they build the game. I remember the talk we had with Banter. It's like, okay, they could address and fix the classes through this whole bullshit borrowed power. What system?
Well, that's to your point. Is they've announced? I mean, I don't know if they did this before, but they've announced strongly at the beginning of 9.0 that they don't really want to do a lot of balance changes to specs, because they don't really want to shift the meta mid-patch, mid-season, both for MDI, both for AWC, and probably also for rating progression, everything like that. That's probably why we don't see Boomies and Afflictions being nerfed the way that they probably should, or let's say other specs buffed, although you have Elemental Shaman. So with that mindset in mind, it's like, okay, you're not doing like big changes, right, mid-patch, but what about going into the next patch? Like, why wouldn't we have changes?
But maybe
like that?
This was the question to you guys. Like, would you guys see changes or, I don't know, fixes more or less through conduits or legendaries or both?
Go ahead, Banter.
I'm so desperate to answer this question. The answer, okay, they will not fix it. What they will do is they will either put in tier sets, which band-aid one problem and introduce several other problems. And it won't get addressed until the next expansion. They will... I don't think tier sets are coming in 9.1, though. So what possibly they'll do is just balance changes and just leave it in a broken state until the next expansion. But here's my question though. What would they fix? What is the main issue with Frost? Is it that Breath of Sindragosa has too strong of an identity and they're trying to make it not a one-size-fits-all talent tree where you just pick Breath and then the talents that you pick alongside Breath are there to support it, or are there just because they do a lot of damage or are very overtuned. And I don't think that and tier sets will either support that playstyle or will support probably Obliteration or something like that. I think that's just the long and short of it.
I definitely agree with you on them band-aiding the problems. Look at Unholy, for example. It's an absolute broken mess of a spec right now that's only held together by Deadliest Coil, Convocation of the Dead, and Soulbind options. It is so utterly messed up right now that I can't believe it launched this way. Hoping that they fix Frost is... I feel like it's too high hopes. Band-Aid fixes are probably all we're going to get, and that's sad, but the issues with Frost are more rooted in the way it plays as a whole, its resources, the spenders and generators. Just there's too much to fix with a minor patch like that.
I would say that the problems with Unholy kind of get fixed with PI though.
Just get back Unholy, to be honest. It's just when playing, it feels a bit slow when playing Prince of Monstrosity, but other than that, I think it's much more fun than BFA. You know, we don't derail too much Unholy, but just let me say that playing BFA, you couldn't do anything wrong. You know, just go out, hit the boss, and like you could play it without failing at all. Like there was no depth to the gameplay. You just press your cooldowns, you don't mess up your runes, and that's fine. Current Unholy, much more fun because there's a lot more thought going into timing your cooldowns, making sure you can Soul Reaper, making sure you're using the second army properly. So that is a big plus for me. Anyway, back to Frost. I do think the Glacier Advance fix to making it do like square root scaling or something like that, where it hits a lot on primary target, would be a very healthy fix. Because currently, Obliteration isn't the plain AoE. But if we make Glacier Advance good, it could be Obliteration plus Glacier Advance being a good competitor to Breath Synergosa plus Gathering Storm, right? Obviously, Breath Synergosa and Glacier Advance don't work together, but I think that's fine. And that kind of creates two different paths in the tree that become much more competitive in an AoE environment.
To Bicep's point, what do you guys think if they buff Glacial Advance to consume Rime as well? And obviously do some extra damage? Because when I play Obliteration, I feel like obviously in Pillar, and if you have a little bit of haste, either from Empower Room Weapon or not, you're almost never going to press Frost Strike unless you're not getting runes, or Rime. So you end up doing Obliterate, Rime, Obliterate, Rime, Obliterate, Rime. And if you want to put Glacial Advance into Obliteration as the playstyle, it would obviously take the spot of Frost Strike, but you would still have to press a lot of Howling Blasts. Would that take too much away from the identity of Howling Blast? Or would that actually put Glacial Advance on the map if it would actually consume Rime and obviously do the damage of it, or at least take over Rime from Howling Blast so that it's a higher priority, so that it feels like an AoE. You don't lose out, or you have to choose between, oh my god, Rime, I got Rime. Oh no, I have to press Glacial Advance because it's 5 or 10% more damage, or less than that.
So just to be clear on that, Rime also buffs Glacial Advance, but it consumes a Rime proc as well. Is that?
No, so I was thinking, because during Obliteration, you weave in Obliterates every other cooldown, and mostly probably because I played Rage of the Frozen Champion, I do Obliterate, Howling Blast, because I get a lot of Rime procs. And every now and again, like I squeeze in a Frost Strike. But if I'm not mistaken, getting Bicep's point, he said that Glacial Advance could be with Obliteration playstyle, can be baked into the playstyle. But if you still have the same, Rime you need to consume Rime every other Obliterate, then you still don't press Glacial Advance that much, do you?
Well, Glacial Advance is part of Obliteration. If you do talent it, it does proc a Killing Machine during Pillar windows. So that's already a thing that you can do in AoE. It's just not very good.
Is it the point like you have to choose between Glacial Advance or Rime on a Howling Blast, right? I'm not sure how much. I'm not sure about the damage difference, but as long as Glacial Advance deals more damage, I think it's good. Also, Glacial Advance applies Race Rise, which is a good point. So it has some upsides, even though it's not a free kind of spell you use with Rime. It still deals lots of damage and it applies Race Rise. So I think it would still be the play to go Obliterate and then choose Glacial Advance over a Rime.
Yeah,
but I get your point that it kind of feels bad to not consume those Rimes.
Yeah, the only contradicting thing that I could think would happen to that situation would be Frost Fever, because that's what applies from Howling Blast. But just spend a Rime proc on a Howling Blast when they're about to drop, and it'd be fine.
Right. I'm interested. I'm just thinking how that would actually work in PvP. I'm like, that's quite interesting. Yeah, I like that idea. That's interesting.
To Obliteration's point, and you guys might know better than this, but we just released our Frost Decay guide by the time this goes live. And I know that I've been looking at least at the logs of performance, and I remember at the beginning of 9.0 seeing a lot more people play Obliteration than Breath, and now pretty much everybody's playing Breath, so that for my brain says, oh, Breath just scales better than Obliteration. So does this mean that in like 2 patches Obliteration is just going to be like super behind Breath, or is just this like a misconception or misinformation? Everybody's just playing the best thing right now.
Can I comment on that, please? Usually when you have these large shifts, right, it's not because something scales better. That's kind of a misconception. It's similar with like the new mythic kind of rankings where Frost is gaining ground on Unholy. It's generally not that one actually becomes better or scales better. It's all about perception and who plays it. People go into Shadowlands, to see that Obliteration is competitive. Lots of people try it out and they kind of, have fun playing it. But after a while, people realize, Breath might have been better. Let's swap over to that. And then you see that being populated in the rankings. Generally, it is not the fact that something scales better and becomes better over time. It's all about what people believe is better and what people believe is better as a function of time.
All right.
So can I give an example on that? If anyone remembers the Chains of Syndragosa playstyle that was around in early WoD, that was technically still around in the first tier in God, what was the orc tier? The ogre tier? I can't remember. Highmaul, yeah. That playstyle existed in Highmaul, but everyone just thought Defiant was better because no one could figure out that you could pair Breath with Chains as like a tank, for example. So yeah, just on Bicep's point, it is more about perception than sometimes just raw data.
All right.
Taze is nodding. Good agreement, I'm guessing.
Yeah, definitely agree there. When it comes to the numbers, Breath does scale slightly better, but it's nothing to be concerned about. In the long term, they'll stay roughly 2 to 3% apart in maximum potential, and I think that's all right. They could utilize tier sets, stuff like that, in order to make a shift if they wanted Obliteration to be better for a tier. So.
And actually, this is another point that I wanted to make. We've had a conversation yesterday on our stream with the Grain and some other Frost fanboys about the BFA Frost Whip Indignation and basically the ice cap, which the build itself was not made good by one thing, but a lot of things put together. And going into Shadowlands, you lost the Azurite, you lost the Corruptions, you lost Chill Streak as well, which personally was what I found fun with Frost in PvE. And you just have Ice Cap almost unchanged. And I feel like that's a dead talent. Now, I'm not saying bring back Frost Whip Indignation, although that was kind of cool to see like a little Frostworm shoot out and pull extra packs that you don't intend to pull. That was really cool for me. But what do you guys think of how can they make Ice Cap either a valid choice on the last row, or do we just like get rid of it? I was personally thinking is like that could work if you bake it into Obliteration, adjust the damage volume levels, and then just put something else in its place.
So, I think, a couple patches down the line, maybe they'll buff it and becomes the meta. And I think that'd be nice to have a little bit of switch up. Going into Shadowlands, they just got rid of everything that made Ice Cap good. They increased pillar cooldown. They decreased pillar duration. They stripped all the Azurite traits that build on top of Ice Cap. The actual Azurite traits, they were contributing more than half of the value that you got from Ice Cap. So you pick up Ice Cap, you gain like 5% DPS, and then you have Icy Citadel, that was like, an extra 6-7%. So like the Azurite traits in conjunction made it better than the actual talent. I just feel like they should add something like that on top of it again. Frostwell, I think that's a good idea. Put it in, makes it good for AoE, makes it fun for the people that like to shoot out those dragons. I wouldn't mind at all if they brought that back. And I think that's a good buff.
They literally did that with Army of the Damned. They just slapped on Magus and then a couple of other tweaks and just called it a day.
I know, right?
I still find it and they did it also, but they also get rid of some of the cool stuff, which more people like Festamite. I thought that was cool. So I do find it weird, their process regarding which modular pieces to keep. Modular as in the Azurite traits at this point. And then which ones to keep, which ones to throw away. If A-Bomb Limb was to stay, for example, what spec would that go to? Would that be baseline ability? Or the Venthi, AoE thing? It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see Ice Cap having some potential later in the expansion if they play around with stuff that buffs Pillar of Frost. Right now, though, it just doesn't do anything. It's sad.
So basically it all revolves around buffing Pillar of Frost, which is kind of what they did in BFA. And to your point, Banter, they did so much of that with Unholy that it felt so awkward that they didn't do that with Frost. I don't know, in terms of game design, how difficult it would have been to bake in either Icy Citadel or Frostwolf Indignation or both to a smaller extent into Ice Cap. make it viable.
Is that an actual question or?
Yeah, it's like
Okay. So I don't know the coding base, but how would it work is they literally made a function that does all this stuff if they're coding properly. All they would have to do is something that they may do often more than not, and I think Biceps and Taze can agree with this, is just copy paste the code or just say also do this function. And then it would literally just shoot out the whelp and then also do the whelp mastery calculation. Or same with Festamite, same with Icy Citadel, etc.
So
like
what
it
you're
shouldn't be
saying,
too
there's a
hard.
chance.
There is a chance.
So my only contradicting point to baking in Frost Whelps to Ice Cap is it becomes a bit of a noob trap at that point. People will take it because they're like, oh my god, it's so good in Mythic Plus. And then they're going to pull the entire dungeon with a single... It's just going to become a noob trap if that were the case. I'd much rather than bake something in, say, like 8-yard radius around you, something like that, where it does damage. Just needs to be a little bit more friendly. But yeah, to attest to Banter's copy and paste, look at Unholy Pact. That's all I'll say on that.
I'm actually curious. Do you guys think that would work if you just made it a like 4-set tier bonus from the raid and just had it happen every pillar? Because then by default, Ice Cap would just be better.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah.
I think that might be.
I don't know. They would have to make it very strong to actually make it viable. I think it's better to just bake it in straight into it because then it's only Ice Cap that gains the power, right? Otherwise, if you just bake it into tier set, all the talents gain power and Ice Cap just gains a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
I think we need a bit of better impact to actually make Ice Cap playable. I also really love the idea of making it less noob trappy, so you don't have it at 40-yard range. It's just ridiculously long range, right? Why would you need 40 yards? Do you ever try to hit something 40 yards away with something that hits not very hard as your Frostlob, right?
Yeah, for sure, especially with Pillar, because why would you hit Pillar while you're 40 yards away from your intended target? That makes no sense.
And
I mean, I can.
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say there was one situation, and it's like to stop a healer drinking, but yeah, that's about it. I remember.
Or
I mean,
stealth thing.
Yeah, rogue stealth. Oh man, I can't believe they got rid of that. So now that Unholy has fallen off in favor in PvP, now less people like know about the fact that Unholy can stop drinks because Epidemic does have a wide range. So yeah, it could also see some like big brain tech play if we did bring Frostwolves back and it was made 40 yards.
I was just happy if it was baked in at all. It doesn't necessarily have to be 40 yards. But to your point and to what I wanted to mention as well, there's a Torghast power when what is it, when you press Icebound 42, there's like a Drake that just stuns everything around. That could instead do damage, and that could be baked into Ice Cap. But extending that to, I think what they mentioned, I know they mentioned this at one point in the Shadowlands beta, is that Torghast is also a chance for them to test future talents or abilities that they could add to classes. Yeah. And I've played Torghast with all three specs. The only real cool Ezra powers are Frost. I mean,
Has the right powers?
Much. Anima powers, like the Drake thing is really cool, and that's such an awesome animation, and it feels like such a shame. But obviously that they could maybe work that somehow into the spec. But what are the chances do you guys think of them adding anything like that into Frost, either later on or in 10.0, if that ever is going to be the case?
Death Coil is an ability that exists for Frost.
Still single target.
And could do something to fix some resource issues if they wanted to go that route as a tier set bonus, maybe. Maybe when you get a Raised Dead, you get Monstrous Concoction as Frost. So you can put it on yourself, which increases... It does increase attack speed, right? So you would get more cam procs. And then you can put it on your Raised Pet. Could be interesting.
Turn Raised Dead into an actual cooldown. It's the dangerous thought process.
Yeah, I will say that the chances of them incorporating stuff from Torghast into the specs is very likely, actually. Look at the DK Legendary Pheromones. That was lifted straight from Torghast testing. So they've already shown that they're willing to do it. They just got to choose which ones feel right to put into the actual game and not just a playground.
So Monstrous Concoction is your go-to. What do you think, Biceps? If you would take any animal power from Torghast to put into Frost, which one would that be? And how would you change it?
I would say high likelihood the Iceborne Fortitude AoE stun as a damage into Ice Cap. That's my bet. I think that sounds very good from my point of view. So obviously it would sound good to Blizzard, right? So yeah, I expect them to do that.
I don't know, man. I mean, in PvP, a lot of traditionally a lot of the general tier sets and legendaries and stuff tend to be tweaked down. So to make a point to Banter's remark on DKs being able to stop healers or get rogues up, that's fine. That's utility, more mechanic based, but in terms of damage, a lot of that shit gets tuned down.
I was mostly thinking about the stun part because you already.
I was saying no stun.
Oh, no stun.
That would be that would probably.
I mean, listen. I remember Remorseless Winter Frost DKs back in Cat, I think, and in Mob 2. Like that was an AoE stun if you let it tick too much. I don't know if you got around to play with that Banter back in the day or you taste, but that was one of most potent things you could ever do against melee cleaves as a Frost DK in arenas. It's like you pop Remorseless. I think it was Remorseless Winter. I hope I'm not mistaken. You just get stacks of it, and then everybody wins
as well. Was it still in BFA? And
I think still exists now.
It's stacks
now, right?
Dead of Winter.
But
it's garbage though.
That was the stack. The stacks version was more recently. I think in Kata was you could press it instantly and you would stun everybody. I think that's how it used to work. But in terms of PvP, because we did want to touch a little bit on Frost PvP, and Banter did say he's more interested in PvP in terms of Frost. You mentioned that Unholy is not as popular right now when compared to Frost DK in PvP. Why do you think that is? Because I still feel like, I don't know, Necrotic Strike is still something powerful.
It's basically, long story short, it's just where the meta is right now. On-demand burst damage is definitely the key right now.
Oh, yeah.
As well as setups for long CC chains while being bursted down. And Unholy is great for this because grip, sweep, and then if they want to, they can Frostworm Fury now because DK has a stun and the AoE blind, which is great. Skill Streak still exists for Frost.
Skill Streak.
So that's always good.
That's scary for melee cleaves. Oh man.
The issue with Unholy is more like you can do burst damage, but right now a lot of that is because of Blight. And if Unholy ever becomes popular, people will just figure out how to play around Blight anyway. And even then, why would you stack Necro when your Killing Machine Obliterate procs inside of a pillar cooldown can do 30% of someone's health? Or 40% of someone's health.
That's a valid point, actually, because right now, the meta is in arenas at least is bursty as fuck. It's different. I feel like in previous expansions, we had the bursty metas from seasons to seasons, but usually the tendency was always to play a little bit more, I don't know, strategically than versus, just popping everything off. So it makes sense, put it that way. Just judging by the meta, having Frost on-demand burst is much more useful than the build-up. And, let's say long-term pressure of a Unholy DK. Because I remember fucking Unholy DKs as a healer, there was no chance. There's no fucking chance. If you would sit on you, that was it. But it's not that prevalent anymore.
I was just going to say, the best way to summarize it is before you respected other people's cooldowns because they were going to do a lot of damage. Now you respect other people's cooldowns because they're going to kill you in about 2 seconds or 1 second. Like one Templar's Verdict or something like that.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Although we know it.
Yeah, that's the truth. But what do you think? I felt like, again, I've played Frost DK in arenas a little bit in WoD, didn't like it that much, but I played a lot against Frost DKs. And one of the most frustrating things against the Frost DK, and Unholy on that matter too, is I cannot get rid of the goddamn slows. What is it? I never understood how that worked. Okay, if I was to play a paladin or something, freedom or whatever. But for example, if I'm playing a rogue, my only option is to cloak or vanish to get rid of that shit. If I don't, and usually you don't use that for chains of ice, right? So there was always this debate regarding DK mobility, and especially in arenas. Where do you stand on that front? Do you think DK mobility is fine just because it has this big amount of slow, or do you think it should still be improved upon?
It's tricky because it depends where the meta's at. If Wiz Cleave is extremely popular, which the trend is usually Wizard Cleaves are usually popular towards the end of expansion.
Yeah, later. Yeah. True.
Where the beginning is usually
Melee.
where melee cleaves are a bit more popular. When melee cleaves are more popular, Frost is usually fine because they have Chains of Ice, they can just press W. Whereas if the mage or the warlock presses W, they're not going to get very far. This is countered by the fact that mages and warlocks now both have blinks, including warlock, but DK also just has grip. In addition to that, it's a long snare, and it's not something you can really get rid of outside of, as you said, like Cloak of Shadows, and some classes just can't get it.
You need big cooldowns basically to get rid of it for a lot of the specs.
Yeah. So, and then even if they get rid of it, it's very easy just to play because it just costs one rune.
Fucking Frosty Cleaves, man.
Yeah.
Add Delirium on top of that.
Juicy.
Yeah, and then like when Wizard Cleaves starts getting popular, or like you need to stop people from moving, have Delirium. You just put that on, and then people just will never be able to move.
So I'm guessing it's DK mobility right now shouldn't be that much big of an issue, but we'll see like in 9.3 or something.
Yeah, it's,
it'll be different then, pretty much.
I gotta say, even if with all of this, Unholy was still better in BFA when the Wizard Cleaves were popular. So I think maybe this is one of the coolest identity that Frost has. It's a slow moving block of ice that just slows.
Yeah, it slows everything in its path. I mean, the fantasy was always great for Frosty Kid. Don't get me wrong, but we're not talking about fantasy here, man.
I mean, if I can add one more thing, the thing is where if you're playing a warrior or a monk, and you're going up against a warlock, and let's just assume they're going to Dark Soul you and do 80% of your health with one second Chaos Ball, right? As a DK, you can't really just run away. You could probably Dora Shadows if you're Venthyr, but you wouldn't be running Venthyr in PvP anyway. Yeah. So your only real option is to just take the hit. Whereas Warrior can leap out and Blade Storm so they don't get CC'd. A Monk can port or roll. Rogue can, at this point, just cheap shot and just dodge entirely. So DK is the only class that has the options just to top themselves back up the full immediately. But yeah.
And you mentioned something earlier, and maybe we can switch the focus a little bit from I guess from both PvP and PvE to something more general. Something obviously we can touch on all of the specs. What happens to the Covenant abilities, right? After Shadowlands goes away, I have a feeling that they should become part of the spec. Maybe they can become the new Talon Row, but we have like 4 of them. Who gets what? Like you said, it feels like Abomination Limb should be fantasy-wise goes to Unholy, but I mean, I like it on Blood as well. But what do you guys think of the Covenant abilities moving on, and do you think they should keep it after Shadowlands, and which one would Frost get?
I'm personally not the biggest fan of the Covenant abilities themselves. I don't think most of them, other than Abomination Limb, really fit DKs at all. Like, I get a blue D&D, yay, I guess.
I mean, it cleaves obliterate, right? Blue thing aside, having it cleave obliterate, maybe that can, in on paper, solve the AoE issue of Frost, unless they buff Frosthead again.
Well, I think that baseline would be nice.
Yeah, I was actually just going to chime in and say Death's Due. My guess would be they'd replace Hypothermic Presence with Death's Due and then just do some balance changes to it.
Yeah, but at that point, why not just make Froststrike cleave in D&D basic?
Exactly. I can see them also getting Shackle the Unworthy to have make it called like Frostspike or something like that, and then making that a Frost ability. I don't know. I don't see Necrolimb or Swarming Mist doing much either. Swarming Mist is definitely going to go to Blood DK. I think we can all agree with that. But Swarming Mist is already basically just Bone Storm, so
pretty much, yeah. It's just
reverse Bone Storm, right?
Say again?
It's like reverse Bone Storm. It gives you Runic Power instead of consuming.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if just they got rid of them. I don't feel like they have that much of an identity in the playstyle. They're not that impactful. So it's not like I'm gonna, cry when we lose them.
Not as
Yeah.
much as Frostwhelps, not as much as Festamite, and not as much as like Magus, I think.
Yeah, they had some opportunities to do some really cool stuff with some of them, and they actually kind of did initially with Kyrian. It was kind of like this discount necrotic plague at first, and then they just completely scrapped that idea, and it's a bit sad because it just ended up in a sorry state.
Well, I'm gonna circle back to like one of the initial questions, in terms of like what they're gonna do, because we talked about, and I know Ian Hazikos has also mentioned, you know, the tier sets, and I remember vividly there was more than one instance where they said that tier sets that will come will act very, well, not very differently than what we were used to, and this kind of leads me to think that maybe they'll do some sort of weird ass Covenant tier set thingy that will probably affect Covenant abilities or something. Do you, I mean, let me ask the boys here. Do you guys actually think they will do tier sets for all the specs? Judging by their past track record of how they implement spec modifying or spec improving, well, we'll just call them systems at this point in the game. Do you think that would actually happen in 9.2 or 3? I don't know.
Yes.
I mean,
I think it will happen. I think
I would go
some.
with no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a you know, introducing tier sets for different covenants would just mess up the covenant balance, and I think that's a very dangerous thing to do because people hate it when they choose something and then
true.
You nerf it and you have to swap covenants and go through all that just because of the tier set. I think that's dangerous. It's much easier to like buff talents. People can just swap that over as they want, but you can't simply just talent swap your covenant.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially when it comes down to DK. Covenants are insanely well balanced, like kind of mind-blowingly well balanced for all DK specs. Throwing a wrench into that seems like a bad idea.
A little bit counterproductive, yeah.
It's the wording that really got me like worried about it, because I don't really know what to think when they say they're gonna be different than what we were used to. The tier says that will come. What the fuck does that mean?
Well, I think they're definitely gonna add tier sets because we've been asking for tier sets for a long time, and they eventually cave in, right?
They listen so much to us, like they lead to like 4 years to like get.
There's stubborn. It's kind of how it was with Titan Forging. It's like, oh, we want Titan Forging to be a part of the game, and then 2 patches later, it's like, oh, we've been thinking about taking it out of the game for a while. It's like, okay, so that's kind of like whenever they have a strong stance on anything, it's like, oh, we don't think tier sets are fun, or what was the initial argument, whatever, and they're probably gonna look into a way to add them back. I don't remember when was the last year. It was in Legion, right? The last time we had tier sets, and weren't they like they had little different tweaks for every spec that you played, right? Because I come from an age where tier sets only affected one spec.
The tier sets aside, do you guys think that legendaries will get introduced, new legendaries, or maybe reworks? Do you think some of the legendaries currently for Frost need reworking moving forward in 9.1?
I don't think any of the legendaries for Frost right now really need a rework. All of them have their strong suits, and they're all pretty well balanced. I do think that new legendaries will be introduced, though, and that might be something to look forward to.
I reckon they'll do the exact same thing they did in BFA, where they'll pick like the least 2 performing ones or the least 2 popular ones, scrap them, rework them, and then ship them. And they'll do that across every spec in the game.
Yeah, but what are you going to get rid of for Frost? There's none that are really bad.
Yeah, surprising. DK has been one of the better balanced class in terms of the systems that they introduced in BFA, and all legendaries are basically used. Absolute zeros in PvP, and the rest are all used in one or two aspects. So my money is also on new things, because they kind of have to keep the hamster wheel rolling.
Okay, I got it. But we talked about improving, like, talents and stuff. Like, what would a new legendary for Frost look like? What should it contain? Should it contain something? Because I know Banter talked a lot about, band-aiding Taste too. They like to band-aid a lot. Do you think they'll use new legendaries to band-aid shit? Or would it be another, like, power increase? What do you guys think?
I definitely feel they're going to go the route of the band-aid fix with legendaries. They did it with Unholy already. They could probably do it with Frost too. Just something simple like pressing Pillar of Frost radiates cold around you, stuff like that.
But do you think, like, their philosophy would be to, like, get a new legendary to band-aid something, or just band-aid, like, I don't know, the dead talent up on the specific row? Where do you think their solution would be? Because they could band-aid one talent, like that would be like I think probably an easy fix, or they could band-aid it through a new legendary. Don't you think like the more proper way would be like to introduce some new power to keep that, counter on the stick going for legendaries?
Yeah, I definitely agree there. And the band-aid fixes don't necessarily have to be legendaries either. You could take the form of conduits, talent changes, stuff like that. So there are ways to kind of band-aid the specs without being too invasive on what we already know if they were to go with the conduit route, for example.
Now I have a question for each and every one of you. So if you were to like be I don't know, hired at Blizzard and have like a full decision. I know I did this with Banter last time, but this is more Frost Decay specific. So you're hired by Blizzard, you're in the spec, the class department team, right? You're handling Frost Decay, all right? What would be, and you have to get creative on this, you're in charge of introducing a brand new ability for the spec, or two new brand new abilities. What would those abilities be, and how would they work?
Well, I have one off the bat, but this was before Two Hand was introduced.
Okay.
My idea at the time was basically there was a level 50 talent that turned you into a vehicle. So you'd become a vehicle, and you're basically like an image of Arthas. Because I know like all the fanboys would be screaming at this. And then that was how you would get Two Hand Frost, because Arthas would be like swinging around Frostmourne. But then Two Hand got introduced, and it was like, yeah, okay, that idea is never coming out. So there was that idea, and that would definitely compete with Breath for like more of a general audience, I think.
Would that be like, it sounds AoE-ish, like? Wow,
yeah. Okay. So you would have like Remorseless Winter would just be like a giant 15 yards thing. You'd probably have like Obliterate. There would be definitely stuff from the fight, and definitely stuff from the chase scenes. So I'm guessing Apocalypse, you would also have that as like some AoE. You'd probably be able to summon Kyrians as well. But then eventually you just fill up an energy bar over time. And then you could just do some giant AoE explosion thing.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
All right. What about you boys? Biceps, Stace, you have any idea of a brand new ability? You're working at Blizzard. You're in charge of the spec, and Ian comes up to you and says, "Hey man, I want a brand new ability for Frost. This one. We're gonna kill him with this one."
Yeah. The first one that comes to mind, honestly, is really going into the root of Frost itself. The fantasy of Frost is basically chilling your enemies to the bone, right?
Right.
So how about a new ability where over time, during the course of the fight, every time you do Frost damage, you get a little increase, a little debuff on the boss that increases every bit of Frost damage you do, ramping up across the entire fight. There is an issue with this. Over long encounters, it becomes exponentially more powerful, but it'd be really cool to have the concept of you're getting stronger as the boss gets weaker. It
actually sounds cool, and I think that could be worked if you had like, points of DR, like for, I don't know, mythic bosses, like, going longer and longer at some point, either being capped or getting DR'd, so some sort of system to refresh the thing, because you get him like weakened to a point, and then you have to like manage, to get to that time frame, consume everything that you have over there, and then reset it. I think that would be actually cool.
That's actually something that I was, funny enough, I was actually thinking that yesterday in the context of demo log, but it's definitely a mechanic that I don't think we have at all, where a class just gets stronger and stronger, scales the longer the fight goes on. And I think that's kind of initially what they wanted to do with Shadow Priest. Right, with Insanity, you just had more Insanity.
Combat. But the penalty is like...
yeah, they didn't really manage to make that work, but maybe they could do something like that for Frost, because it makes sense. I mean, if you get hypothermia, right? If you stay in the cold too long.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Maybe they could turn hypothermia presence into something like that, right? Maybe like an AoE aura that increases Frost damage by 1% every 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds. And then you have...
I think to make it like... to work, you will have to actually be able to extract it and kind of put it into another target, because otherwise you become very weak as long as there's like AoE or there's like target hopping.
Oh yeah,
just bake that into Glacial Advance, spread it to all nearby enemies, split the stacks.
Oh yeah. Sounds like we're talking about necrotic plague here.
Sorry,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
your idea Taze reminded me of something I thought of ages ago, and that was like how we could change the mastery, maybe. So mastery could change to increase Shadow Frost damage by X, and the chance to apply Brittle Bones to a target by X out of 10. And then Brittle Bones is a stacking debuff where the target takes some extra damage. And then if there's 5 stacks of it, Obliterate or Frost Scythe could be consumed. Sorry, could consume those Brittle Bone stacks for like 300% more damage or something like that. It's a bit like, what was that talent in Legion? Where you could have like a Builder and a Spender for your Razor Rise stacks on Frost Strike. Oh, I can't remember off the top of my head. There was definitely that. There was like the first talent row. I'll have to go back and double check it. But it's basically hitting that, but baking it into the mastery somehow. So having just like a baseline Builder Spender that has some interactivity with Razor Rise.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're gonna do any change, I feel like mastery is one more way to start from, because it's just a little bit too bland, just more frost damage.
Yeah,
I mean, it's nice. It keeps the spec on the map, but more frost damage. I mean,
yeah, no, but the way Taze pitched it, and then Banter took it and made it some sort of implementation into mastery. I think that would make it like one of the most interesting masteries any spec would ever have. Because I would play the shit out of that. Because it's like, dude, come on, it's like super cool.
I mean, intricacies of the spec aside, I feel like putting Frost alongside Unholy a little bit, it feels like Frost has 1 or 2 fewer things to manage and doesn't keep you that engaged as Unholy, but that's obviously just a personal opinion. But they could definitely add something extra for Frost, I feel, to keep the spec a little bit more engaging.
Yeah. Try not to wish for 2 interactive masteries, though. Look at Elemental Shaman. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
All right. So I think we're getting to the closing mark here, and but just like a short closing thought, or I don't know, idea for Frost Decay. Like for each and every, I know we developed a lot of this during the podcast, but for each and every one of you, one thing that you would change or improve on Frost. Short and sweet, like to the ending.
Yeah, I got a quick one. Replace Hypothermic Presence with Shield Streak. I think that would be fun.
Oh, nice. Cool.
Yes.
All right. How about you, Taze? Anything different?
Takes resources. That's really it.
Make Chill Strike cost Runic Power and then replace it with Hypothermic Presence.
The thought process, and all of the ideas that we talked about in the podcast, like from the big brains of the Acaris Discord. Hopefully everybody got something out of it and learned a thing or two. And I'm really hoping that some of this in the future will get to some of the Blizzard folks.
One could only hope.
Yeah, at least in terms of theories and ideas, because I know they're pretty stubborn on implementing stuff they hear from the community or anything like that. That's fair enough. But then again, we try to make this more constructive as possible. So that being said, we want to first off thank you, Biceps, for joining. Remember, check out Biceps on his Twitch, on his YouTube, his guides on Wowhead. All the links will be in the description. We will also thank you, Taze. I know we do have social links for Taze Stories. You must have a Twitter or something meant to put for the people there, or in the Discord.
Don't actually use Twitter. I don't stream enough for it to be worth me plugging. So yeah, you can find me in Archerus. That's
All right, thank you, boys, once again for joining. It has been a blast. I've learned a lot about Frosty Gate, which I am like almost 100% a noob
It's educational.
Very educational. Thank you for your time, guys, and we'll see you with a brand new spec. Probably Assassination Rogue is next on the table for next week, but don't quote me on that. Maybe something else will happen. Thank you, guys. Have a great week ahead.
Take care, /bow. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW.